We saw everything from stolen bicycles to stolen dogs. We saw firearms. We didn't know firearms were there, including an AR-10 assault rifle, until Toronto Police senior command officers from 51 Division sat in on one of our Zoom calls. We saw all kinds of property damage, theft, robbery, break and enter, public defecation, some pretty insane behavior on the streets.
Hello and welcome to the next episode of Beneath the Law. My name is Gavin here with Stephen Teal as always. And today we have a very special guest with us, Dana McKiel. And Dana, a voice you'll recognize undoubtedly from sports broadcasting, particularly basketball, football, play-by-play, for 35 years, I think, a well-known sports broadcaster in Canada. And probably more importantly for today's episode, is the founder of a group called the Downtown Concerned Citizen Coalition here in Toronto. And one of the things that's important about this podcast is we always try to talk about the intersection between social, political issues and the law, and how the law is really the contract, if you will, the terms of the agreement as to how we want a society governed and what kind of society we are trying to have. In Canada, and particularly in downtown Toronto, there has been a enormous, and I will say enormous, I'm born and raised in Toronto, and I've seen the way the city has evolved over the years. Now, undoubtedly, it's huge expansion of the city in terms of size. I would suggest probably quadrupling in size. But one of the darker aspects of Toronto at the moment is the absolute explosion in homelessness, in what I'll call vagrancy. I know that's probably a bad word, but it's I think an accurate one. And the number of people on the street that are lying on the streets, and that has fomented, if you can use that word, into what I will call much more permanent type encampments within parks all through the city of Toronto, particularly the downtown core. And these encampments have become more and more permanent. Initially, I think, the city reacted to them as one would expect, because, camping in the park is clearly illegal. There is no doubt that if you are to decide that you're going to, have your family vacation in one of our parks and put a tent up, that the police should come in and would come in, hopefully, and remove you. Parks are there for everybody. They're not there for people to live in or to holiday in or what have you. And that was the process for a while, but that process seems to have changed. And a different approach has been taken by the city government, which is one far more of tolerance, if not, I would suggest, encouragement and facilitation. And what that has led to, in my view, and in the view of a number of others, just reality is the encampments are still there and often growing. And Dana, maybe you could tell our listeners a bit about your background of your organization, and where you have seen the city go with respect to this serious issue within the downtown core.
Yeah, thank you very much, Gavin and Stephen. The Downtown Concerned Citizens Organization was formed in 2020, and that was in response to homeless hotels and heroin injection sites that, as you said, fomented since that time. And our organization, which started with 20 people, including a retired judge who is a local resident, decided that we're going to form a committee, and we're going to battle this because the city of Toronto was not listening. There was no public consultation whatsoever prior to dropping homeless hotels in the downtown area or anywhere across Toronto. So we formed this committee, and it quickly grew to the point now where we're at 56,000 plus. We have a complete army, and that includes half of Bay Street. And we said that enough is enough. We're not just going to focus on this homeless hotel or the four others who, by the way, were given in a sole source contract to the city of Toronto for $284 million. The owner is Deepak Ruparel, who also owned the Victoria Hotel, the Strathcona Hotel, and the Bond Place Hotel. And the Novotel which was the homeless hotel on the Esplanade, was the most fierce of the bunch. It was insane. We saw everything from stolen bicycles to stolen dogs, all being put out on Kijiji for curbside pickup. We saw firearms. We didn't know firearms were there, including an AR-10 assault rifle, until Toronto Police senior command officers from 51 Division sat in on one of our Zoom calls. And we saw all kinds of property damage, theft, robbery, break and enter, public defecation, some pretty insane behavior on the streets. That also included one guy who stole a moped. He brought it up into the hotel, tried to power it up, and it caused a 3-alarm blaze. So all this carnage is being caused over the course of a year, and we battled it, and we finally said enough is enough, and we're going straight to City Hall, and we're keying in on the people that are peddling this ideology. And that included Gordon Tanner, who's the general manager of Shelter Support and Housing at City Hall. And we also keyed in on Marianne Bedard, who was the previous general manager, but she ran in the middle of all the commotion and all the chaos, and she took off to peddle this ideology in London, England. So we've put together an outstanding team, and we decided that we're going to form partnerships across the city with all these different communities who are also battling the same issues with all these with all these homeless hotels and heroin injection sites and respite tents and encampments all over the city. And it's paid off very well. There are so many out there. It's a massive majority that will not tolerate any ideologies, NDP-laced ideologies at that, from City Hall.
Yeah, I mean, it's nobody should be. It's funny. People say, "Well, you're anti-homeless," and I say everyone should be anti-homeless. Everyone should be against this type of behavior. But the amount of this behavior and the growth of it. I mean, it's not just in Toronto. I mean, you see it in all sorts of cities all over the place. Certainly in the West Coast and California. And one of the things I think that's interesting is if California and Los Angeles, I mean, Los Angeles was a disaster zone, miles upon miles of tents along the streets and people just camping out. I suppose the weather's better in LA than it is here, so it's easier to camp out. But even sunny California with the also liberal Governor Gavin Newsom has now finally come along to say we need to clear this up. We cannot tolerate this type of complete squalor in the middle of our urban centers because the decay, the rot that brings to a city is palpable. Certainly, I've seen it in Toronto with our downtown core, which I think was a great place to live. And one of the great things about Toronto, I used to brag about compared to American cities, was the downtown was so great as opposed to the American cities where everybody ran away and moved to the suburbs. You could live in downtown Toronto. But when you allow this type of lawlessness, crime, squalor to occur, you're not helping anybody. I mean, the poor, the poor wretches, frankly, to use a kind of Dickensian phrase, that have to live in this, they're not doing them any favors. And ultimately, you are rotting your neighborhood from within by not enforcing the very laws that you were elected to pass and enforce.
And it's certainly visible, rot, Gavin. I mean, you and I have spoken about, you have spoken about coming into work, and there are all kinds of syringe needles in the subway station and at Eaton Center. I was out yesterday down by St. Lawrence Market, and dozens of syringes there at the corner at Church and Front Street, which is a beautiful part of the city of Toronto. So, we're seeing this blight, and Dana, you were involved certainly a few days ago from the day of this recording with respect to an encampment that has been in a city park, an historic city park, for over 2 years.
Yeah, what happened was that we had a victim of assault give me a call one morning out of the clear blue sky about a couple of months ago or a month and a half ago. And I thought it was just going to be a very brief call. It ended up being a 2-hour phone call and describing all the crime and the carnage in the area. and it's actual carnage. We're talking people and death, and we're talking propane tank explosions. The fact that people live no more than 50 feet away from this encampment really put a lot of people at peril. It's a very dangerous situation. We've also seen videotape footage that residents that this young woman lives with in a condo complex next to a major hotel here in downtown Toronto. And it was absolutely gruesome to watch some of these video clips of assaults on each other using bricks, using poles, fire. It was just absolutely insane. So we offered to help. And that included local residents and business operators, and say, enough is enough. Let's put forward information. And this is where we get technical with City Hall, in that we're able to provide granular data to ensure that these encampments are just, it's not something that, well, not in my backyard. It's not NIMBYism. We're actually showing you the data saying, look, you can't do this. It's against the law. It's dangerous. It's unhealthy and unsafe. And so we put in for an FOI. They're still working on it. It's and that's been 6 weeks already. So can you imagine the catalog of all the incidents at this encampment over 2 years? Clarence Square encampment, for those that are tuning in. And then with that, spoke with the business proprietors, and they said the same thing, that they've suffered a lot of property damage, smashed windows, break and enter, theft. And when we offered to host a press conference, I went to City Hall a day in advance to ensure that if we need a permit, we can get one. Well, the permit people at the Parks and Recreation Department decided that they're going to inform the general manager, Paul Johnson, general manager of City of Toronto. And the next morning, or just prior to the start of the press conference, there was a Gradall and a dump truck and 4 loads of garbage that they lugged away prior to the press conference.
They're cleaning up the house before the guests arrived. So it's. I think for our listeners, just to understand Clarence Square, because I think Clarence Square and Toronto is one of those places that there is sort of an old town Toronto, if I can call it that. And when you go to New York City, for example, I think one of the terrific things about New York City is all the little parks that are, you'll go a block and there'll be this square or that square, and there's this little oases in the middle of what is, an incredibly urbanized area. And Clarence Square, to some extent, almost reminds me of that, like New York-esque, Manhattan-esque type of a park. It's this little square, literally, that I think was established in the mid-1800s. And if you look around it, I mean, probably not on the Spadina side. There's a couple of gas stations there that probably take it out of the sort of urban historic milieu, but the square itself is surrounded by these great old row houses that are, I think, terrific looking, a real reminder of Old Town Toronto back to the mid 1800s, when Toronto was really talk about an outpost in the wilderness. If this was the end of the earth as far as the civilization was concerned, but there was this little core in Old City of York, or whatever. There's the other side over on the King Street side, back where St. Lawrence Square, and that always reminds me of it too. But it's such a treasure in Toronto. These little parks that really make living in downtown Toronto, bearable and make it tolerable, and for a group to monopolize it. Breaking the law, camping there. And then the reaction of the city, I find just astounding. What has the city done? Usually when you break the law, the police will come in and enforce the law and stop you breaking it. What has the city's approach been to Clarence Square? From what I've seen, they've erected porta potty toilets for the use of the campers to make it comfortable for them, which as I see, have been promptly wrecked every time they've been put up there. But that doesn't, be that as it may. Then they've installed a nice little CCAN type office, which is a semi-permanent office, so that they can have meetings, I suppose, to talk about how they're going to help these people break the law further by camping out. And then they've hired security guards to do exactly, I don't know, to stand around. I mean, they remind me, these poor kids are, dressed up in outfits, but I don't know what that they can do. I mean, a lot of talk about being put into a war zone, but all of that is costing tons and tons of taxpayer money.
And don't forget daily garbage collection.
Well, Yeah, well, apparently not very good daily guard because they had to come in there and clean it all up when Dana's group was going to show up. So, this is a taxpayer. It's just outrageous. To me, it is outrageous. And I think that, when you facilitate this type of lawlessness, I mean, I don't know, maybe I'm just a Luddite, but it seems to me when you make things easier, you get more of it. So what am I missing, Dana? What are we missing in terms of the reaction of our city and the apparently enlightened ones who think that if you make it easier to become a junkie, you're going to get less junkies? I think the exact opposite.
Gavin, you're not missing anything. It's City Hall that's missing something. And they're missing an awful lot in terms of enforcing the laws and ensuring that these people that do need help are involuntarily taken off the streets and put into facilities that they can dry out. Because we look at this, that most of them are drug intoxicated and that 83% are not from Toronto. And we did that through our granular data, and we matched up all the data with Toronto Police records as well in the past. And this is what we find. They got to go. And when you look at the mayor, Olivia Chow, and the city councilor for the area, Asma Malik, who already brings a whole lot of NDP ideologies and baggage from back 10, 15, 20 years ago to her radical activist days at University of Toronto. And this is what they're peddling. This is what they're selling. This is what they're all about. And it's all NDP backed.
Yeah, I don't disagree with any of that. And I think, look, let's just step back from that for a moment. I have no doubt that as with many of these kind of socialist views, there's the best of intentions are behind it. Oh, we were really believe that this is going to make it better. But from a common sense perspective, how on earth does it make it better? And you raise a really interesting issue, and it's always one that troubles me. You raise an issue about the hotels and the enormous amounts of money that have been paid to this, what I'll call homeless industry, to facilitate the industry of facilitating homelessness and making it more as an more attractive option, as opposed to making it really, really difficult. And making it hard to get drugs, making it hard to become a drug user. And there's a lot of people who've made a lot of money on this industry of homelessness. And I think you're seeing it now. I mean, the security guard company isn't doing that for free. There's a profit involved in that. The CCAN company that's installing the office down there isn't doing that for free. They're making money at it too. So, this is all taxpayer money that is being spent to achieve exactly what?
Achieve what? I don't know, but I can walk through those numbers with you. And that includes the Super 8 Hotel on Spadina Avenue, and that's upwards of $60-70 million. The residence building at Yonge and Davenport, and that was purchased with a senior resident still living there, not knowing it was changed over into a homeless hotel. And that was upwards of $100 million. And then the best one was the Bond Place Hotel, which they purchased for $91 million. And that was Abby Bond from the Shelter Support and Housing Administration, who actually purchased the building right there at Yonge and Dundas. And with the retrofit, which because they had to do a retrofit with the plumbing because they were flushing needles down the toilets. So you can imagine the plumbing cost for that. And it ended up being $140+ million for the Bond Place Hotel. We're talking $1 billion here, and a lot of the money came from the federal government through Justin Trudeau and his plans, and that filtered down to the city of Toronto, and more specifically, Shelter Support and Housing for all that. Another, you mentioned the security costs at Clarence Square. That's $80,000 a month.
A month
per month.
Wow.
And I gotta tell you, Dana, Gavin and I actually took a walk there a little while ago. We didn't even see the security. Like, they weren't even there. So that's interesting. And I understand, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but the city of Toronto, just with respect to Clarence Square and two other encampments, one of which was also, I think, cleared out at Allen Gardens, the city had spent already $4 million, or had allocated $4 million for 3 parks to take care of the campers.
Well, it's now become a whack-a-mole because once you clear out one encampment, it proliferates someplace else
and pops up somewhere else. Yeah,
and it's a whack-a-mole type of model here. They call it the enhanced outreach model from City of Toronto. And some will respond and go to shelters or to rehabilitation treatment, whatever they're offering. But in this particular case, there's still wigwams and teepees still set up at Allen's Gardens. And many of those campers at Allen's Gardens have gone south to St. James Park. St. James Park has gone from 1 or 2 tents now to upwards of 30, 40 tents. And I took a walk through there late last night, about 2 o'clock in the morning, to look around, and people have got fires going. They're heating things up because it got a little cool. And this park is located at King and Jarvis in the old Toronto area, as Gavin had described earlier.
Yeah, so this is an interesting. I think this is really the point. If money were being spent to actually resolve a problem, and the money and the resources that are being allocated towards the resolution of a problem had a tangible effect in the sense that they were actually some concrete evidence of resolution, I don't have a problem with that. What I do have a huge problem with is all what I see, and this is anecdotally, and you've got the numbers, obviously, Dana, but anecdotally, I see more and more and more money being thrown at this approach to facilitate drug use, to facilitate homeless people. And all I see is, what do you get? You get more drug addicts and more homeless people. So how is this? How would that? I mean, that to me would be the definition, frankly, of fiscal insanity, would be to spend money to fix a problem that only seems to make the problem bigger.
Yeah. Well, you hit it right there. And this all goes right to Toronto City Council and to the Osma Maliks, Olivia Chows, Josh Matlow, Paula Fletcher, Chris Moyes from Toronto Centre. And that's the crowd that's peddling this ideology. And they couldn't care less about budgets. You need more money? We'll go and call on the federal government and the provincial government, and they'll shovel all that money to you if they know it's good for them. The billions of dollars that have gone into this since 2020 is unbelievable. If you were to ask for an audit right now, it would blow your mind away. It would capture the attention of the Prime Minister of Canada because there's so much money that's been thrown at this.
I don't think so. Not a current one, anyways.
Okay, so
it would catch his attention that somebody was throwing more money away than he can. Yeah, in the throwaway money Hall of Fame, I think he's right in there. But anyways,
but here's a good example. You're looking at the Bonne Place Hotel, and it's $141 million. So they've got residents there. They're now staying there, and they've taken up residence, and some of them have been there for quite a while, despite rules saying that you can only be there for 3 months before they filter you out. And some of them have got these manicured units now that have been totally rebuilt. They're better than condo units and bigger. One of them even has a hot tub right in the middle of the living room of this homeless hotel. And she's taken total advantage of it because I talked to her.
Wow, that's incredible. One of the things about the deal and we can get into it, but my understanding of the deal that some of these hotels got in terms of the homeless shelter conversion is that they had a contract with the city for a fixed period of time, that every single room in the hotel was fully booked at basically full or minorly discounted rates. And then they got an indemnity at the end to put the hotel back into the state that it was in when you got it. If I owned a hotel, talk about the golden goose. That's the greatest deal in history, isn't it?
I totally agree. You look at what happened out at the Delta Hotel at 401 and Kennedy Road. Many of the campers in the downtown area, or the ones that flocked into Toronto, and they came from everywhere, from Edmonton and from North Bay, Hamilton, down east, Montreal. They all came to Toronto because this is where it is. They came downtown to party and to live for free in a homeless hotel during the pandemic. And so what happened was a lot of these people were filtered out and to places like the Delta Chelsea Hotel, Delta Kennedy Road Hotel out of 401 and Kennedy Road. And so there were people that were coming there as actual tourists and staying at the hotel, not knowing that there were people that were encamped in the hotel.
Could you do
And
that on Expedia or what? Like you book your free hotel?
I would imagine all the different various tour operators didn't know about this, because if they
Wow.
did, then they must have kept it silent, or they were paid off not to say anything. But half the hotels for legitimate tourists and guests, the other half were all homeless people. And keep in mind, among the homeless people is a tremendous amount of refugees who came through the opening at Roxham Road in Hemingford, Quebec, and they did not want to go to Montreal. They were all bused to Toronto.
Wow. A cacophony of folly as far as I'm concerned. But the short answer to all of this is I think we come back to the same old point that I think your group and many citizens in Toronto are simply asking the city of Toronto to stop playing creative arts with the law and to actually enforce the law. And I think when you do, again, maybe I sound this is going to sound harsh, and I think that a lot of the people who on in the political spectrum don't want to be the one to say that you're being mean to anybody. But sometimes you have to be, I think, a little bit cruel to be kind. And if you say that these people are, people who have serious mental health issues or addiction problems, what you're basically saying is that they're not capable. What you're basically saying is they're incapable of making good and rational decisions on their own. And in that regard, they're not dissimilar, in my view, to a number of other types of people under the law. That we talk about this all the time, whether you're competent or not. Think about it this way: if let's say a child, we would all agree, a 10-year-old or an 8-year-old child is not capable of making proper decisions. Very similar to someone with mental illness. Very similar to someone with addiction. If I, as a parent, and I had an 8-year-old child, and he said, "You know what? I'm going to take a tent, Dad, and I'm going to go camp out in the camp in the park overnight with my buddies, and we're going to drink beer." What do you think? What do you think the police would do to me as a parent if I said, "Yeah, that's okay. I'll we'll drive you over there and let you camp out"? Would the police let me? Would they not remove that child from me as a parent? I would lose custody of my kid.
Yeah,
And yet, the
Children's Aid
city of
Society
Toronto
would be there.
treats these people very much in the same way. Help me with what would a good parent do? A good parent would say, "There's no way you're going to that park. Get up in your room and stop it." I mean, maybe they don't have any other options, but I think that many of them do. But it's time for the city of Toronto to start acting like a good parent rather than the delinquent parent by just letting the kids do whatever they want.
You could rest assured that the parent would be at 361 University Avenue the next day, and probably on the front page of every major daily newspaper across the country. There's no question that Toronto City Council, and there's various other city councils across Canada, and that includes Montreal, Vancouver, and Halifax, that have decided that they're going to be easy on the people that are coming into the downtown core and camping out, or camping out anywhere across the greater metropolitan areas. It's illegal, it's unsafe, and it's not good for them at all. It's not good for the residents and business operators in the area. All it does is create erosion. This cancerous ideology that the NDP is peddling, and I cite specifically them because they've got a game plan for all this, as we found out, and it's all backed by an organization called, a very radical organization called Progress Toronto. And these are the people that are peddling this ideology, making sure that each ward in Toronto will carry the NDP mantra, and this is what they do. This is how they get their votes. This is who they are. It just drives people crazy. It's cancerous. It cannot work. And so the massive majority have spoken up, and we do have solutions, because they always ask for solutions in Toronto City Council or in Queen's Park or in Ottawa, and we do have solutions. And those solutions include remote facilities for rehabilitation and treatment, as what we witnessed with the Ohio model and the Rhode Island model in the States. And we also encourage that Toronto City Council use the facilities such as the Exhibition Place or Downsview, or large facilities where these people can go, remain contained to those facilities, and if they have to do it involuntarily, they have to do it until the social workers and people that work in the social services field deem them fit to be able to go back into public for public consumption.
Yeah,
Wow.
and
So
there's some large industrial buildings too that are just sitting abandoned over on Cherry Street, that I think would be great places for that kind of rehabilitation. There's a lot to unpack there, Dana, in terms of Progress Toronto, organizing candidates, and hopefully DCCO can also organize candidates or become a center for that. There are legal issues as well in terms of taxpayers do have a right to enforce municipal bylaws. It's in the statute, so people need to look at that. And I know that we probably need to wrap this up. I just have one last question. Was the entire encampment now cleared up at Clarence Square and Clarence Park?
No, they dressed it up just for the press conference to make sure that pretty much a lot of the junk was gone, but that tent still with clothes, as well as 3 or 4 people in these large tents, they're still there. As a matter of fact, they're dining out today.
Wow. Anyways, that is all the time we have. But Dana, thanks so much for joining us today, and really appreciate your insight, and keep fighting the good fight, because I think the city of Toronto is worth it. And we can't let it deteriorate and rot into oblivion, and especially the downtown core, which I think, again, great place to live, great place to work, and we just can't let that get away from us. Anyways, so thanks very much for listening, everyone. Please rate us, give us your rating, and if it's bad, it's good, whatever it is. If you rate it, that's all we're looking for. And always remember, if no one is above the law, then everyone is beneath it.